Welcome to Roundhouse Roulette, a Walker, Texas Ranger podcast. Well, welcome everyone to a very special Roundhouse Roulette mini episode. Today, we'd like to shine a little light on Chuck Norris's 1995 interspecies buddy cop major motion picture, Top Dog, in which his character, the lone wolf cop Jake Wilder, gets his first partner ever, Reno, a highly decorated police dog whose handler was murdered by white supremacists. Through hijinks and tough love, they must work together to bring down the group of neo-Nazis before they can put their master plan into action. Also, there's a child actor.
What could be better?
Yeah. So I'm Evan Dalton here with my brother Adam and our brother from another mother, Mr. Bob Leahy. Today, we're doing something a little bit different from what we normally do, and this is all because we got a little shout-out from our Roundhouse Roulette superfan, Mr. Kevin. He said, "You should inform your listeners that the movie Top Dog, starring Chuck Norris, is available for free on YouTube for a limited time." And let me just say, is it really free if it costs this much to watch it? And we'll get into that.
You did have to sit through a few commercials, but, I'm just glad that we could help pay for Chuck Norris's retirement.
Not going to lie, I don't think there were any ads when I watched it. I watched it on YouTube.
Okay. He recommended watching it on YouTube, and Kevin reached out to us at our email if anyone's interested in trolling us or sending us some hot Chuck Norris or Walker tips. Hit us up at roundhouseroulette@gmail.com. Yeah, so earlier today, Bob sent me a text. "I can't believe I'm about to watch a 90-minute movie about Chuck Norris and a dog. These truly are unprecedented times." Hey, there are worse ways to pass some time for sure.
Yeah. Whether or not we found them, I don't know.
YouTube's a great way to watch this one for free. I also use the Tubi app, which is kind of like the newer cable streaming apps. Check it out.
Before we start digging a hole in the backyard for this movie, if you're watching at home and don't want any spoilers, hit the pause button, that's with a W. Watch Top Dog and then roll on over right back to us.
Woof, woof.
All right, well, welcome back. If you did just watch this movie and then you came back to this, that's great. Clearly you want someone to affirm how great you are.
If you did that, you definitely don't have any commitment issues.
It's true. Chuck Norris gets partnered with a dog, and throughout the film, he gets outacted by a canine. And basically the point is this dog's handler was taken down by some neo-Nazis in the San Diego area. These neo-Nazis took down the dog's owner. They even shot the dog too, which is pretty redonk.
That was brutal.
Yeah, and they threw it off a boat. But the dog takes a licking, keeps on ticking. And he makes it back to civilization. Remembers who shot him, of course, but he's a dog, so there's a language barrier there.
Oh, yeah. That was a really big twist.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets partnered up with a guy who's been suspended from the force, and it's not exactly clear why they bring him back, only the fact that he's Chuck Norris. Because I have to assume that the police are putting other people on the case, too, since it seems like another cop was shot and killed and all that stuff. But long story short, Chuck Norris, and let me just say right now, even during the movie itself, I kept calling Chuck Norris Walker. So that will happen during this mini episode, and we ask for your forgiveness. Basically, Chuck Norris doesn't want to be partnered with a dog, duh. And, they have their whole Turner and Hooch moment. They overcome their differences and become great partners and take down the neo-Nazis. And like I said before, there's a child actor. Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
He doesn't really do anything.
At the beginning of the movie, they shoot this old senior citizen cop in the face, and then they do the same to the dog. It was brutal, man. And then throw it off the side of a boat.
Yeah, I saw this movie maybe 10 years ago, and at the time, I thought, who is this movie for? Like, Turner and Hooch is a similar movie. It's with Tom Hanks and like a giant mastiff or something like that, and he gets partnered with this dog. They're an odd couple, and they just play off of how funny it is, and Tom Hanks is an actor and has energy, so there's that too. That movie is kind of breezy and fun, but this movie, like the credits, one of which, the producer is Ron Swanson. So,
yeah. Also, a lot of the characters, the guy who died at the beginning, his last name was Swanson.
There you go.
I got looking into other movies because apparently this movie got panned because it was so derivative, kind of copped all the other dog cop movies. There was also K9 with Jim Belushi.
I think if Jim Belushi were described as an actor, it would be derivative. So that's perfect.
Oh, that's harsh. I mean, it's pretty hard if you were the brother of what's his name?
Yeah,
John.
Jim Belushi. John Belushi is the one that died.
Oh my God,
he was actually a funny guy.
Yeah, all right. Yeah,
Jim Belushi was just kind of.
He was the funny one.
Yeah,
he was
so
funny.
that's harsh. I mean, it's hard to live up. It's like being, Aaron
Norris.
It's like being Aaron. It's like Evan.
That's fair.
Ooh.
That's fair. This just got so real.
Right off the bat in this movie, though, the whole scene at the docks, that was the whole beginning of Turner and Hooch. Like, it's even the same set, right? That's where, in Turner and Hooch, the old guy that owned Hooch lived in a boat, and he got killed on the boat.
Oh,
it's true.
No.
It's true.
So as I'm watching this, I was like, they're not even trying. Like, they.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb. Like I was saying, though, at the beginning, the credits that are rolling are like these weird cartoony 90s looking font credits. Mm-hmm. And then out of nowhere, you just get dropped right into the grim. And like they're shooting this old guy in the heart and then a dog and throwing them into the river. It's like, what is happening?
I was glad to see that Reno was swimming pretty close to right after he hit the water, so he was able to make it, even with gun wound. Do you guys remember Rin Tin Tin K9 Cop?
The TV show, yeah.
I guess the original Rin Tin Tin was in the silent movies in like 1918 to 1932. And then they must have rebooted them in the 90s. So there's always been this whole thing with dogs and police and man's best friend, man's best partner, all that whole thing.
It didn't really hit rock bottom until Top Dog.
Yeah, I think they said everything that needed to be said.
Yeah, I think the film's biggest struggle is its target audience.
Yeah, and I think one of the best parts was, and I don't know if it's really the best or worst part, was when we met Walker and they're trying to call him up. And you're like, oh, is this going to be Chuck Norris now? Are they finally going to introduce him into his movie? And there's a guy lying in bed. There are like pizza boxes and beer cans all over the place. And he's pulling the telephone closer to the bed from the telephone cord itself. And then finally picks it up. And that's when we meet Chuck Norris's In the Doghouse Cop.
I will say that even though they're trying to play him off as this young, spirited police officer, a keen observation that my wife made was that he still has dad hands.
I think it was there that he gets out of bed and sits on the floor in polka dot underpants.
Yeah, he's got quite a good underwear wardrobe in this. He also has, I think he has hearts later on.
That was pretty amazing that we had to stare at him talk on like a really long phone call with him sitting in his polka dot underwear. I couldn't look away.
Yeah, it worked for me.
But so that's kind of how we meet him. And then they bring him into the office because his chief was like, hey, we need you for this case. Come into the office. So he comes in the office. All his clothes are wrinkled because he's kind of like a slobby cop. They don't say that he's hungover, but he almost acts like he's hungover.
Just like Turner.
Then they bring him into the police office, and the chief is like, I've got a new partner for you. He's got the same amount of awards and same amount of
insubordination.
Yeah. All his pluses are your pluses. All his minuses are your minuses. You guys will get along great. And then a woman walks into the room, and he's like, her? The chief's like, no, him. And Chuck Norris looks down, and Reno, the dog's there. Chuck Norris almost says, oh, this is even worse than having a woman as a partner. That was the unspoken joke.
Yeah, that was definitely cringeworthy.
And then from there, they switched to dog vision. and we're seeing Reno's like POV of his new partner Chuck Norris getting told that, hey, you're gonna have to take him home with you.
There's a lot of dialogue from the dog in this movie too. Like they kept going, "Arr, arr."
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
is it really necessary to do all that? I understand, like the dog's mad. Okay, yeah, or the dog's questioning, but it was like constant chatter from this dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost as if they thought like, oh, well, the viewers, they need to know that the dog's still like alive or that it's there, so it's just gonna keep making noises. But yeah, that was really distracting and weird.
How much do you think the dog got paid for this movie?
A few kibbles and a few bits.
Not enough. He needs to get a better agent. Also, that dog is most certainly dead, which is a sad thing to think about, but it's true.
And also, they insult that dog the entire movie. Someone even calls him Benji. Come on now.
As you were saying, Evan, for some reason they have a kid in this movie. I think they couldn't make up their mind if they were going to do like, oh, this movie's for kids, but Chuck Norris does violent action movies. Let's just throw it all together. Also, is this going to be a comedy or is it going to be an action flick? Is it going to be a little bit of both? I'm not sure. So at this point, because they were like, well, maybe this might still be a kid's movie, we better introduce the child actor into the picture who was the grandson of Reno's previous owner and partner who got shot at the beginning of the film. And he comes over to visit Reno at Walker. Oh, there it is.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's fine. We know exactly what you're talking about.
Over at Chuck Norris's bachelor pad with all the crap on the ground. Who is the lady who comes over to?
Yeah, I'm not sure. She's not really the handler of the dog.
She's another cop.
Who must be in charge of the K9 unit or something like that. Although she doesn't have a K9 to use.
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know.
But she comes over to check on to make sure that Reno's settling into Chuck Norris's bachelor pad. And she's like, this place is a pigsty. This is no place for a dog. So Reno, I think it's supposed to be funny, he goes and sleeps in the back of Chuck Norris's car because it's more comfortable than his house or whatever.
It's not even Chuck Norris's car. For some reason, when this old guy dies,
right.
And keeping in mind that the old guy died like a couple weeks prior, right? The old guy dies, the dog is recovering, but they keep the old guy's car, don't clean it out. Now, it's presumably a police vehicle, so why wouldn't they clean it out and repurpose it?
Well, that makes more sense.
Right. Well, instead, they keep it around for 2 weeks, and they give it to Chuck Norris for him to drive around so that the dog can sleep in piles of clothes in the back seat.
That he's used to.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
It's more of a home to him than Chuck Norris's bachelor pad.
Right.
So that's kind of where our first real getting to know that, oh, there's going to be this kid in the story. I wonder how they're going to weave him into the story because he's going to have to play some sort of pivotal role in the plot, I would think.
For sure. Yeah.
Pretty much that's about all we get until he shows up at the end of the movie and was kind of like, oh, justice was served. Right?
Yeah.
It was the only reason to have the kid in there was to maybe have some emotional attachment to his grandfather who passed away. And they didn't even really pull on that at all. Mm-hmm. There was some taffy there that could have been chewed on.
The whole end scene, though, the whole chase and everything, like building up to it. Do you guys notice the music during that part? It was like happy. It sounded like Danny Elfman or something.
Weird.
And they're like speeding to to get to this
racial unity rally.
Yeah, rally with all these people that the white supremacists were going to bomb, and they're playing this this Danny Elfman music, and I was like, what the hell? And the mayor keeps making jokes, and then there's all this fighting. The whole time, maybe like 10 minutes on screen, they keep cutting back to the kid riding his bike.
Yeah, and I'm like, here it is.
He just keeps going, and they keep cutting back to him. He's like, he's going to get there. He's like riding across the entire city.
He's got a sick bike.
What's the kid going to do? Like, what's he going to... He's going to show up and like get taken hostage.
Exactly.
Or he's going to, he's going to mess something up, or he's going to save the day.
Right.
And then he gets there and he doesn't do anything.
Exactly. Like, I was like,
why did you have this kid in the movie at all? You built up the whole movie getting to the end, and then...
The moment, I was like, oh, they're going to use this kid now. They're going to use him now. Yeah. And then they don't use him at all.
Nope.
Yeah, so that was very much like a Walker episode.
This is gonna be like Justice League, It's going to come out, and then there's going to be another cut that comes out from the original director. So this was what? This was Aaron Norris? I want the Eric Norris cut.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be another cut of Top Dog. I'm just going to put that out there.
Seeing as how it's up for free on YouTube.
We may want to make a fan cut, though. I might get on that.
Okay.
Well, we don't have all the extras, though. We can only just could cut it down, but it is 90 minutes, which is the right amount of time for this movie and this year. That's exactly correct, right? Mm-hmm. 90 minutes is the right amount. Oh, yeah. But that's a long 90 minutes.
So the music, they didn't have like a consistent musical theme, because some of it sounded like really cheap soundtrack music that was just done like really quick. And then some of it was like really orchestrated, like you were saying, like Danny Elfman, like movie style. And you're like, oh, they had a budget to have like a full orchestra here, but then they just had MIDI tracks here. And then in a few of the funny spots, it sounded like Barney episode. I was telling Evan, it was like, boom, deep, unbelievable.
Just curious, I'm just seeing it. You can get this movie on DVD on eBay for like, $8-9. You can also get it on VHS for $3.
Ooh,
plus $2.80 shipping. So
it's probably a different cut on the VHS, probably extended play.
I'd get the VHS just to keep it true.
Yeah, I hear that at the end of the VHS version, you actually see the ghost of the old guy instead of the ghost of Hayden Christensen, which is what you get at the end of this one.
Exactly.
Got to go for VHS, for the classic edition.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, so pretty much what happens is they pair up Walker and Reno the dog. They go and shake down, I guess you would call them Nazis, at the boathouse because Reno remembers either the scent or the location of where the bad guys were. And once they do that, they do a little shakedown, typical of Walker. Hey, we're on to you kind of thing. That's when the neo-Nazis know, oh, man, the dog remembers us. We need to kill him. So they send out a hit on Chuck Norris and his partner, dog Reno. So what happens next is, I guess it's the next night, and they're back at his bachelor pad, and they send a bunch of creepy-ass clowns to take a hit out on the dog and Chuck Norris.
What can make white supremacists creepier? Put clown masks on them and give them machine guns.
And it was pretty creepy. So again, this was like the tone. It was awesome, actually. But the tone was like, this isn't really a kid's kind of tone. It's pretty brutal. And pretty awesome, but it was kind of just like, what is happening right now?
I think the first time I laughed while watching this film was as these clowns were about to, they're about to start just like shooting machine guns at Chuck Norris's house, right?
Yeah.
And they're getting into position, and one of the clowns, instead of running around a bush, he like jumps basically off of a trampoline, which is what the stunt double will be doing. And does like a somersault in a clown mask over the hedge. I'm like, this is so over the top. What is happening?
So what ensues is just an excuse for Chuck Norris to show off his karate moves and kick some ass, which he does in fine fashion here. I enjoyed this part. He definitely doled out some awesome punches. And did he do a roundhouse kick?
He did a couple. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And the dog, I think, actually takes a few people out, too, because Reno, also, much like Chuck Norris, has some moves of his own.
Reno has no rival.
But what really ensues here is a parallel to Walker, Texas Ranger itself, because what happens next is Chuck Norris is taking out a bunch of the clowns, but some of the clowns kind of get away to a car, and they start driving towards him at a ramping speed, at which point Chuck Norris pulls out his revolver. And what happens, Evan?
I knew it was happening. As soon as I saw the look on his face and the gun, it's going to be...
The edits, too, of like him, and then he shows the car, back to him, cars turning around, back to him, cars coming towards him, back to him. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yep. It's like Chuck Norris has a gun in his hand. He's walking into the middle of the street, and there's a car bearing down on him. Boom. Super shot.
Yeah.
And, they actually try to explain it away a bit, because earlier on in the show, in the movie, it feels so hokey, it could be a TV show. Oh, wait, it is one. It's called Walker, Texas Ranger. If you like Walker, Texas Ranger, check out our normal podcast. Where cars basically bump each other and spontaneously explode, oftentimes with crazy sound effects that sound like Jaguars. But in this case, he basically shoots out one of the tires at great distance. The car careens into another car and explodes.
Excellently.
They say later on that, that car, its trunk was full of C4, so that's why it blew up.
Well, C4, they use that in Walker episodes all the time. It's just kind of like lingo.
It's like in Lethal Weapon when they're like, they've got cop killer bullets. And so that's all they talk about was cop killer bullets. It's like the one thing they can kind of glom onto that makes them seem legit. So they talk about C4.
I hate to actually there, but I think when they mentioned the C4 in the car, remember the scene they randomly cut to the U.S.-Mexico border?
Oh, yeah.
Which was another great car explosion, but those guys...
That's different. That's a different one.
That was kind of random. I didn't really... It was great because a car exploded, But
sure.
I guess that's how they got some evidence that allowed them to figure out what was going on, right? But at the time, when they cut to that scene, those guys blew up, I'm like, what? If you show these bad guys, it's like... And you kind of developed a character for a couple minutes. You're like, these are other bad guys. And you just kill them off immediately. But I guess they did provide some evidence.
Critical.
Yeah.
So the Super Shop, there was no C4 in the trunk. That was a different scene.
I know they were talking about the border car, but I thought they meant the other one too, but whatever. It's irrelevant. The car hit another car and blew up.
So that was one of the instances where I was like, this makes sense. Aaron Norris, who is a producer on Walker, Texas Ranger, and brother of Chuck Norris, produced this movie and is using his same tricks as far as the super shot, C4, having neo-Nazis as your villain, a varying tone of TV show as far as drama, action, comedy, what are we watching? All these things come into play here in Top Dog.
And I think what we learned is when you give him 90 minutes instead of 40, he doesn't know what to do with it.
How do they get to when Reno and Chuck Norris go after the Nazis at their headquarters?
Basically, there's a bunch of garbage going on. Basically, just like Walker's detective work, which is basically 90% hunches, 10% punches.
Okay, so let's break this down. Chuck Norris, his character, earlier in it, he goes over his mother's house for no reason other than to say, he has a mother.
Introduce the character.
To have some really terrible joke about the TV repairman blowing himself up or something while he's trying to mess with the electric box. They do that, and it's kind of like the kid. You're like, how are they going to use his mother in this movie? Because they didn't do anything with the kid. They're going to have to do something with her. So they need to find a way for Chuck Norris to figure out the neo-Nazis' plan. And that's how they use his mother. He's trying to drop something off at his mother's house without her knowing so he won't get stuck in a long conversation with her. She catches him as he's just about to leave, and he's like, I got to go somewhere. And she's like, I just need you for 1 minute to help me out with something. And he's like, okay, because he knows he's going to be out in the backyard doing yard work for her. So they cut to him in the backyard digging a hole and putting like a tree in it. And while he's doing that, they have this weird exposition where it's kind of like, yeah, Mom, we just don't know what to do. We know it's the neo-Nazis, but we just don't know when they're gonna strike. And she goes, well, if I was a neo-Nazis, I'd do them tomorrow. And you're like, what? What does Grandma know about the neo-Nazis?
Far too much.
He's like, why is that? And she goes, well, tomorrow's Hitler's birthday. And I was just like, holy crap, what?
I got it on my calendar right here.
It's circled with a swastika next to it.
Oh my God. As if it was totally normal. Chuck Norris is just kind of like, that's right, I gotta go. And he leaves before putting the tree in, and the tree falls over as he leaves. And she's like, oh no. So
slapstick.
They make like a slapstick scene out of Hitler's birthday. And then he goes straight to the police chief's office and he goes, oh yeah, my mother said tomorrow is Hitler's birthday, so we got to get all the local law enforcement ready.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
So in perhaps the most realistic part of this movie, the courts will not give Chuck Norris's character a search warrant for a warehouse based on the one hunch that they're planning something for Hitler's birthday.
Based on his mother's hunch.
So he decides to take things into his own hands and go check out this warehouse.
And he takes his new partner, Reno, along.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The top dog, by the way.
Yeah. And while he's there are a couple of cops who are running surveillance, and he tells them that he's going in. And so he goes in, and while he goes in with his trusty dog sidekick, those two cops end up getting shot.
They get taken out by some neo-Nazis. Bob, can you describe the neo-Nazi warehouse lair?
It kind of gave me a 1989 Tim Burton Batman feel.
Oh, yeah.
Or an Shredder's lair, Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah, totally. Earlier on, when they had the rally there or whatever, and the guy's giving a speech.
They had like a long table with all the white supremacists around it.
And all those bankers' lamps.
Exactly.
It's like everyone's doing their taxes or something.
They got a really great deal on those at JCPenney.
Every seat had those green bankers' lamps you see. And you're like, what? Well, that's weird. And then there was like a bar cart, but they had like one bottle of booze on the whole thing. So I'm like thinking, is that just the leader's single bar cart? He wasn't offering it for anybody else. There was one glass on there.
So, anywho, Chuck Norris ends up in this warehouse, and they find a notebook that has photographs of different targets, and then on the back has a little like MapQuest directions to all those places. And he's like, oh, these are all the targets. We got to get out of here. So he gives the notebook to the dog, and they're about to leave when the lights come on and all these neo-Nazis come out of nowhere. At this point, the neo-Nazis had already shot dead two cops out front, in the public, basically.
Yeah.
Outside of their own warehouse. But in this case, they decide not to shoot Chuck Norris, but to send like 40 goons to come and just like beat him up.
And this is one of the best scenes because you're like, oh, okay, at least we're going to get to see Chuck Norris fight. Like, it's like one of those instances where once one guy's knocked out, they send another guy in, even though there's like 80 of them. So he goes and takes them out one at a time, and they do like this awesome overhead shot of Chuck Norris just taking people out. And you're like, how long can this go on? They knew. They're like, oh, why don't we just all team up and hold them down? And then the leader comes over and smacks Chuck Norris in the head with a wrench.
And while this is happening, he's sent the dog off with the notebook to escape. And the dog is being chased by two goons and having all kinds of hijinks, where the dog launches somebody, drops like an oxygen tank onto a lever that launches them into the bay. And another guy's like standing on a platform, and the dog presses a lever, and this crate falls on him. And he basically has like the cartoon reaction to having your head hit, where he like goes cross-eyed and
birds fly around. It was kind of Home Alone-y.
You know who that guy was who got the crate dropped on him?
Wasn't that Aaron Norris?
It was the director, Aaron Norris.
Nice. So he was all in on Goof Town, but someone wanted it to be edgier.
Yeah.
But Chuck Norris is taken hostage.
They're about to shoot him. He's up against like these pipes. One of the main white supremacists has Chuck Norris at gunpoint, his arms tied behind him. Reno comes up behind him and starts, I guess, licking the ropes, because licking the ropes helps Chuck untie them. So maybe he was just lubricating the ropes.
It's a smart dog.
I would not want to see that dog's tongue after that. That would hurt.
Well, the dog, it could have been chewing it, but that kind of brings up a point we missed here, which is a police dog is, in my experience, almost always a German Shepherd, right?
Yeah.
This dog, I don't know what kind of dog this is, but it's like a long-haired mutt.
Yeah.
It's such a, like, if you look at this dog, it's like, oh, that's a family dog, right?
It's a shaggy dog.
Shaggy dog, it's cute, whatever.
I think because there were all those other movies with German Shepherds, like K9, and those other movies, they're like, oh, it's got to be a different kind of dog. They even have a montage with the kid with the shaggy dog in all these different, like, costumes for no other reason other than to use the kid who was in the cast.
And the dog. Shows up the dog's skills.
Fun
too.
side. That was the side of this movie that was like a kid's movie. So anyway, Reno bites the ropes off. Chuck Norris is able to use his fists and subdue the white supremacist. They cut to the police station where they're looking at the book that Reno got of all the potential locations for a white supremacist attack. they say, oh, well, there's a racial unity rally happening today. They must be planning to attack that on Hitler's birthday.
Yeah, actually, the cop, she's like, oh, of course.
So they're like, oh, we got to get all units on this. And so they send all the cop cars and everyone over there. And this is the point where the kid's like, he's listening to the police scanner.
Yeah.
And he hears like, oh, all the cops are going here. I should go there too. And he goes, hey, Mom, I'm just going to go to the park for a second. And she's like, okay, Billy. And it's like, really? He's driving into a neo-Nazi attack.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this is the point where, yeah, he's going to be used as leverage or something like that. Nothing happens with him whatsoever. So we get to this unity rally. I'm thinking like, it's going to be like a racial unity rally in California. You'll see some African-American people, because when I think racial equality in America, I think the black struggle, especially what we're seeing nowadays here in America. What this racial unity rally looked like was like international harmony.
It was like an international religious leader conference.
Yeah,
like what it looked like.
Like I think the Pope was there. If he might have been, that character might have been the Pope. Not sure.
Yeah, or some higher up in the Catholic Church. He had silly garb and some bishop or archbishop. I don't know.
Basically, imagine like one of those warehouses where you can buy costumes for Pope or like a really cheap costume for like a rabbi or something like that. And basically imagine people dressed in those types of costumes. And there you go.
Pretty much just internationalstereotypes.com. They have banners up that say racial unity all over the place. So it was just a plot device to have something for the Nazis to attack. So the Nazis have their men kind of embedded in the staff for the racial unity rally. In fact, the sound guy is actually, he's actually a Nazi.
He has hate tattooed on his knuckles, right?
Yeah.
I noticed that.
Yeah. He also looks like he is like the drummer for the band Extreme.
Yeah.
Roadie. All right, let's not.
Okay, fair enough.
No drummer jokes.
Bass player.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, there you go.
Walker and Reno pull up along with all the police, and the white supremacist leader is kind of like, oh no, they know this is the target. We better move up our time schedule. And so everybody scatters. The white supremacists start pulling out machine guns and shooting at people. And all the higher-ups who are there, presumably to talk at the racial rally, including the Catholic, maybe Pope, maybe not, and a bunch of leaders from around the world, are put into this limousine because they're going to try to get him out of there. They must have had VIP limousine status that day. Immediately upon getting into the limousine, the driver locks the doors and gets out, and he's a Nazi. And apparently, all the C4 they stole earlier in the movie was to put under this limousine so they could blow it up.
The windows are bulletproof, and they can't get in, and the doors are locked. So Chuck Norris has to defuse a bomb. And you know what? I never thought I'd say this, but Walker, Texas Ranger, the TV show, handles defusing a bomb way better than this movie does.
Yeah, so he's lying on the back, like on one side of the limousine with his police chief, and they're getting shot at from the other side of the car. And he's like, I got to defuse this bomb, and we don't have time for the bomb squad. What wire should I pick? And his chief says, pick the blue one. Walker pulls his hand out from under the car with the red wire, and his chief says, it's a great thing you never listened to me.
The police chief is almost an enjoyable character. Almost.
He actually had the right vibe for the movie that should have been made.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah, just lean into the comedy a bit more. And
the obliviousness in the comedy, he nailed that tone. If everything else was that tone, it would have been a totally different movie. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, the for some reason, the two major leaders of this cross-country supremacist group, they decided to be present at this event. So, of course, when things turn upside down, they just run. And Walker chases one of them down and ninja kicks him a bunch of times through fences in a park.
And this is the guy that killed Reno's partner. Okay.
Yep.
And finally, Chuck Norris's character promised that he'd bring this guy to justice. So this is him finally taking him down. Reno comes around, and Reno's kind of there like, hey, you killed my partner. Woof woof.
Yeah. Reno is actually what Chuck Norris uses to get the confession out of the guy.
So Reno does a little dog scare tactics. And then while this is happening, the kid rolls up on his bike.
After riding for miles and miles and taking up minutes of screen time.
And that bike has no gears, so you know that he really put a work in.
So he rolls up just to see justice being served. And I think that's the only reason that he's in the movie.
I think he even says, "We got justice," or something really dumb like that.
So at the beginning of the movie, Reno's original partner who gets killed, there was like a running gag where Reno likes to bite his scarf. So at the end of the movie, they caught the bad guy and everyone's like, oh, yay, yay, yay. And all the dignitaries are being let out of the limousine. And the Pope-like character is standing there with his Catholic scarf. Reno the dog runs up, grabs it, and starts going away with it as if choking the Catholic priest.
Yep. Drags him to the ground.
And they're like, no, Reno. And then it's like, ba-dum-dum, end of movie.
Was there a freeze frame?
Yep. Throws on the dog.
I was going to say, when I'm watching it, I'm like waiting. I was waiting for the freeze frame. And I couldn't remember. But.
And then what song starts playing?
I don't want no bones.
It's a song by Tab Benoit. It sounds like a Stevie Ray Vaughan / Jimi Hendrix kind of like riffy Stratocaster blues.
Yeah, if you watch the movie Roadhouse, it sounds like all the music from Roadhouse.
It's called a bone picking.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, oh, we'll do like a funny dog song at the end when this priest is being strangled by the hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the action scenes are straight out of a Walker episode. And a lot of the borderline comedy, borderline groan moments are straight out of a Walker episode. In Chuck Norris, he's kind of the same in anything he does. Like, and this is not a knock to Chuck Norris. Anytime we make fun of Chuck Norris's acting ability, it's not a knock to him because he's an action star from the era where you had to do most of this stuff yourself. Beyond that, his main thing is like being a karate champion and master. And that's what people want to see. They want to see him kick ass and do all the moves that's what he's known for. So it's all right if he monotone says his lines a lot of the time and he's kind of the same character in whatever he does because that's not why we're here. That's not why we paid the price of admission. Not necessarily in this case because it was free on YouTube. But
yeah, I was...
You see the glare I'm sending you right now? I don't know if I agree with that, but it was a great movie. I had an excellent time. I didn't feel like I wasted an hour and a half of my life after I watched it. No, actually I did. I totally did. That was a complete waste of time.
So who would you recommend this movie for? Probably people who, if you're a huge Chuck Norris fan, I mean, you've got to watch it.
Yeah, that's really the only person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of Walker, Texas Ranger, I mean, just the fact that we've called Chuck Norris's character Walker multiple times, it basically feels like he walked out of the set of Walker, Texas Ranger and onto this other shoddy set and filmed this and then probably walked back to the set of Walker, Texas Ranger and kept filming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in that same era. So this was definitely during when the show was going on.
The guy who plays his captain, actually, I recognized him from several episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger.
No way.
He's on two of them playing different characters.
that's
He's in
awesome.
an episode called Heart of the Dragon, which is
that's a great one.
One of the few episodes with Asian mysticism. Pretty rad.
Yeah. And this was pretty much Chuck Norris's last major motion picture that was in the theaters. He's made some cameos since, but that pretty much after this was all straight to video or on TV movie kind of situations.
Well, although I'm not sure what we just watched, I think we can all agree that Top Dog was a bit rough, but its ambition was certainly bona fide. Well, let us know what you thought on Facebook and Instagram at Roundhouse Roulette and on Twitter at Roundhouse Pod. And be sure to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back in your podcast feed soon, recapping and reviewing another action-packed roulette-selected episode of Walker, Texas Ranger real soon. Until next week, this dog's got a bone to pick.
When you're in Texas, look behind you. Oh, 'cause that's where the ranger's gonna be.